think about the time jumps?
This is probably where I'd get quite critical. I get perhaps why they did it, in the sense that I think with Game of Thrones, had they nailed that ending to the sort of same quality we'd seen throughout the rest of the season, there wouldn't have been an issue. You would have had that loyal fan base who was super, super excited, and they'd have flocked over to House of the Dragon. You'd have pulled in everyone else from the hype. Your marketing campaign would have just been nothing because your fans would have done the work for you. They didn't have that option. So not only have we got to draw these people back, but we've got to bring new people in and keep them hooked. We don't have we can't rely on that word of mouth and everyone being super, super hyped up for it. And I feel like they maybe condensed it a bit too much. I found it quite jarring that some of the actors stayed the same, regardless of how old they were. And then we had, Rhaenyra and Alicent change halfway through. And I can't fault the actors for what they did, because, they were all absolutely brilliant. But I did you sort of started an episode and I very much felt like, oh my God, where are we now? Oh, Alicent's got a baby and she's pregnant, and right, well, what's Rhaenyra do? It was very odd. I'd have maybe liked to have seen it drawn out a little bit more. I don't know if they would have got away with drawing that out into 2 seasons, because like I say, I feel like this was make or break. They had to nail this. And that's why I feel like they've crammed in as much as they could. Because if you think back to Game of Thrones season 1, that was all very much sort of setting the groundwork to introduce people to what was going to happen in later seasons. It felt very action packed, I would say, if not a little too action packed. I did sort of find myself a bit confused at points. Oh, where are we? What's going on? So that's probably the strongest criticism that I would have. What about you guys?
I didn't necessarily mind them as much, but what I would say is there was times, especially with Lena and everything that happened there. Like I kind of in Harrenhal and the burning, like I wish it would have been maybe 2 episodes. Like it almost feels like maybe just 2 more episodes in the season would have went a long way. Yeah. And to do that, if you wanted to stretch the budget, you probably would have had to cut back on some of the CGI, some of the action stuff, which I would have been okay with. I do think that it's interesting that the original plan was to do none of this. Apparently, the original plan for the show for Miguel and Ryan was they weren't going to tell any of the story. They were going to start where we're starting in season 2, but George was like, you have to tell the story. So I feel like it was a compromise in some ways. Like if it was up to George, we would have had 13 seasons of like season 1, you know what I mean? If it was up to him, of course, but I feel like it was kind of like a middle ground, and I could feel that compromise in some ways because of the time jumps. I do think like time jumps in general are just impossible to do well. Like I no one likes time jumps. I've never met anyone that like, man, I love that time jump. That was a fantastic time being jarred. And the fact they did it multiple times and they kept the audience is a really good sign. So as much as I wish that maybe it would have taken a little bit more time and had more time in the oven per se, for a figure of speech, I do think that they accomplished what they set out to do, which was get story across, keep the audience hooked, and now they begin the story that they originally set out to tell, which is cool. But yeah, I mean, surely jarring. I know a lot of the more general viewers in my family, my extended family that watch, were very confused and were asking me many questions. So
yeah, looking back at it now, I think the only way you could have fixed it is you'd have to move some events around, and have certain events happen to older people or younger people, or whatever. Had they only done maybe 1 time jump, then it might not have been as awkward. I think it was just sort of the fact that it's like you get to episode 5, okay, the young Rhaenyra and young Alicent, they're gone, and now we get the older Alicent and Rhaenyra, but then we still have like a young Aegon and young Aemond, and then like 2 episodes later we have older Aegon and Aemond, and so it's just like there's a lot of moving parts. Maybe you could have had, older Aemond claim Vhagar and lose his eye, right?
Yeah.
It wouldn't have been as correct with the books, but maybe you could show that, and then it's like maybe you move a little more hostility in there, and now it's like, okay, it seems like a war is going to break out. Oh, now he's claimed Vhagar.
Yeah.
Ooh, like that might be the only way they could have fixed it, was to just do 1 time jump.
Fidelity to the source material can be a trap at times, and general audiences, we all want it to be faithful to the books, and that is unfortunately not the only barometer of a successful adaptation or a show. It actually goes way further than that. So I do think at times them being so loyal to the source material actually possibly hurt the visual medium in which they were telling it, just because of time. So that's an interesting conversation, and it's a hot debate on how faithful everything has to be. But I agree, Matt, that I think in some ways, if they had bent some things, that maybe it could have possibly been just a little bit smoother. I mean, obviously it was great. We all enjoyed it, but it's always fun to point out things that maybe could have went a little bit differently.